All right, fantastic. Here we go. Let me just get everything set up. Let me get everything set up again. And put on some other relevant music for you. There we go. That one's quite fast, isn't it, Jason?
It is. I'm dancing.
On my screen, it says replays are off. Is that true? Let's see. Maybe they're not. We'll wing it. What do you think, Jason? Are the replays on? Are the replays on?
I hope they are. It says replays are off.
It does, doesn't it? Let's get it ready 1 second. Hey, everyone, relax.
Unless you have to start the room again.
No, we can work it out. 1 second. Well, I'm recording on my computer, which is all the important thing. So let's wing it. What do you think, Jason? We want to start?
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to do it. All right. Okay. Well, let's go for it again. I got to do it from the top now. So this is an Architecture Social and Global Architects Alliance special. So today we thought we would talk about something I felt was very important. So there's so many part ones that I they've hanged up their work on in the exhibition. They've got their models on the plinth ready for everyone to see. And now we've got the realization that actually we need to find a job. And how do you go about that search? Well, I think it's a very interesting thing. It's a very hard thing at first, just getting a job. What do? People talk about it. Do I get together a CV? What do I do? Do I assemble a portfolio? And we're going to cover all that over the next few weeks and talk about it in more detail. But today, what we're going to talk about is actually the architecture search. We're going to talk about finding a job in architecture, finding your first job in the industry. That's what we're here to do. And we can overcomplicate things. We can think about the CV. We can think about the portfolio. We can think about, oh my gosh, what font I should use. And all those things are really important. But first thing is first, before actually going into the search, we need to start thinking about what that actually entails, what the point of it is, what we need to do. And today we're going to talk about strategizing at the start. Because if you think about it, what is getting the job? What does that entail? Well, from the employer's point of view, they've got a problem in their business, and you need to be the person that fills that gap, helps them out in their problem. And when you're starting in the industry, at first, you're not going to have all that experience of building regulations because you're just starting. And you're not a mind reader. That's going to come in time. But what you do have is ambition. What you do have is guts. What you do have is integrity, drive, and passion. And you can get all that experience, but you need to showcase your personality, your strengths, and any experience you've got today. That's going to be a little bit of a bonus. But you need to do all of that. Make sure that the employer sees that so that they take a chance on you. And hey, if you've got some software skills, then that's a bonus as well. If you can plug in and be a bit of a Revit guru, that could be really useful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what we're going to go through together. And people can, if you've got a question, we can go for it. Otherwise, no drama. If not, me and Jason can ping pong off each other, because Jason, as well as running the Global Architects Alliance, which is on Clubhouse, actually, he's trained as an architect. Well, that helps in the conversation. But more importantly, as well as rising the ranks, and now is a hiring manager, so it can offer a little bit of insight in all the CVs that he sees, as well as being a coach. And I think that's important, not just about advising people what to actually do, but actually, as well as that, seeing all the mistakes that people make. And I see a lot of mistakes as well in terms of architectural recruitment. So without further ado, let's open up the conversation a bit. Jason, first of all, how are you tonight? Are you okay?
I'm great, Stephen. Yeah, it's. I think it's just perfect timing to do this subject with a lot of university students coming to the end of their kind of year, and they're hunting that for that first job. And in fact, I've been asked to do a talk on to Manchester School of Architecture. And it's partly on this subject because I think what I see is a lot of architectural assistants are not really prepared. And I did this for the first time last year and had this discussion, a discussion you're having now. And it got so much response that I've been asked to come back and sort of double the time that I'm speaking. For this year. And in fact, I'm doing it in 2 weeks' time.
Love it. Amazing. All right. Well, I think that's perfect. And just before we go on to that, so what did you think, Jason, was as important as the search is? How can we do a little interlude? Can you rate my Clubhouse start? So what do you think? Do you think that I've kicked off the room really well? Do I need to do more sound effects? What do I need to do to keep people in the room? You're the expert.
Oh, well, so sound effects are always fantastic because I think it's one of the only rooms on Clubhouse that actually has sound effects. I wish I could do that myself, but I think
I've got a honking horn, but I couldn't organize the room at the start. But you're going to have to teach me these things. But I tell you what, you'll teach me that. But for anyone here in the audience, we're all about learning. I used to be a part 1 architectural assistant. I was a part 2 architectural assistant as well. And when I was looking, it was the global pandemic. I didn't have no rich uncles. I didn't have no aunties or family members which were architects. That would have been nice, but I didn't have it. And what at the time, it was the global recession. There was no jobs out there. So strategizing the job search, I kind of done it by accident. And there were some things I did right, and there were some things that I did wrong. And one of the things that I did right, Jason, was that I sent my CV out to a lot of places. So before we go into that, before we go into all this stuff, what I want everyone to think about is actually what it entails to actually do the job search. What are the components there? It's the CV, it's the portfolio, that's the actually designing a covering letter or getting that email. And once you've got that, that's kind of like the design of it all. You've actually got to go out there like a mailman and package it. You've got to send your application to a lot of places. You've got to get that CV and portfolio in front of companies. Now, how do you do that? That's what I call the delivery phase of it all, of the job search. So you've got the design phase at the start where you're going to get this CV and portfolio ready, but equally as important, I mean, if you've got the most beautiful CV in the world, it doesn't matter if people can't see it, right? And you've got to get that out in front of people. And that could be implying on job boards, but that's probably as well going to actually be you applying to the companies direct. That's what's called the speculative application. And if you think that only 20% of jobs, or even less, I think it might even mean like 10 to 20%, there's a factual number online, somewhere in between that, but the statistic is quite low. If those are the only jobs that are advertised, there's 80% of jobs out there which are just knocking about. And if you're a part 1 architectural assistant, you need to apply to companies directly because recruiters don't really recruit for part 1s. So that stops that. You've got to be your own recruitment consultant. You've got to take it into your own hands. You've got to make sure that you are the person that convinces the employer. You've got to get in front of them. So as much as it is important to design that CV and portfolio, you have to really think about delivering and getting in front of people. Now, Jason, in your experience as well, do you find that some of the students that you mentor struggle finding jobs, or where have you seen success? Is it people are going out there and actually getting in front of people?
Well, I can definitely tell you my thoughts on this subject, and I think that the the big problem for me is when students start the job search just as they're pinning up their final work at university, and then just expect, that they'll send some CVs out and then they'll get a job. For me, you need to start searching for that job 3 years back, and then what I mean by that is you should be building up your presence online, whether that's through LinkedIn, whether that's through, all the other platforms like Instagram, but also building up your profile, your own personal profile. I think that is a good place as a starting point. So when you do need to search for that first architecture assistant job, it's very much easy, and you can maybe only actually dedicate 10 minutes a day. But 10 minutes a day over 3 years is going to put you in a much better position than just kind of, and we're talking odds here, aren't we? We're talking odds. We're just trying to say increasing your odds of actually getting that first job. I mean, what do you think about that?
Correct. I think increasing your odds is a key word, because especially if you're starting out, you don't really have that network. So one of the ways that you're talking about is, I think, LinkedIn. Whether or not you're going to get something immediately right now, that's really good practice. And it's this kind of thing of, like you're saying, of planting a flower or whatever. You're not going to see something straight away. But over years, that tree or what have you will blossom, and you build a network. And the network is extremely important. That's what really keeps my livelihood. So as a Part 1 architectural assistant, getting your network out there can be really important. I've seen people do it in a way by sharing their sketches, sharing their work. All this stuff really, really bodes well. And you can get you presence. And that's what you need when you haven't got an existing network, is you need to expand it so that you build presence. You get seen by more and more people. And over time, that will pay off. Now, I think that's a really good exercise, and you should do that. But also, I think what's really important as well is that you need to get your CV and portfolio out there. And hey, how do you do that? You can apply for a job online, but chances are, if it's on a job board, then every Joe blogs like yourself is going to see that. And that's going to be extremely competitive, right? Well, what is, in my opinion, a much smarter tactic is to actually look at architectural practices locally, make a list of them, get an Excel, get a database, get an Airtable, whatever it is. And you can find a template. I've got one on the architecturesocial.com. Whatever it is, you get something going and you get out there and you start approaching these companies. You ask people on LinkedIn if they know if there's a job opening, and you would be surprised how many people will help you. And you'd be surprised that if you put an application direct to the company, it's never going to be seen as a negative. It's always a positive. They haven't got a role for you. But put it this way. If you're sending a beautiful CV and portfolio direct to the company, and it's presented well, chances are people are going to notice, and it will bode really well. It's going to be a good thing. It's not going to be seen as a negative. I think that actually that's going to really help you out. So you've got to build that network, and you've got to make yourself present. And presence is the key word. And presence can come from building up network. It can come from doing LinkedIn, but it can also, I think, it comes from getting your CV and portfolio in front of people. And let me tell you, you're not very present if you send off an application to a job posting, which has 100 applicants as well. You're 1 in 100. You have a 1 in 100 chance to be invited for an interview. That's quite low odds. But if you do that and then you message 100 architectural practices, chances are one of those 100 will invite you in for an interview. I think the stats was 1 in 10 applications anecdotally around this area gets a response. Now, notice I use the word response. Yeah, that ain't getting an interview. That's a response. And even less than that, you're going to get an interview. Some responses are no. Some responses are thank you, but no thank you. Some are we haven't got a position right now, and some are as well as that. And we'd like to invite you for the interview, which is great. And that's kind of what you ideally want. And so we're talking about here the strategizing the job search. So let's summarize quickly, Jason. So we talked about designing the CV and portfolio, because that's what's going to grab people's attention. That's what is going to initially get the conversation going. And then you've got to get that in front of people to be invited for the interview. But then the next part, Jason, is actually we want to get in for an interview, right? Which is kind of like the execution. So if you were the postman before, now the goods are in front. You've got to be the marketeer, the salesman, the convincing person that they meet you, and at the end they think this person could be part of our company. I mean, what do you think, Jason? Does it make sense what I've said so far about designing the CV and getting it out there to get an interview?
I think as well, I just would like to add that to terms of strategy, and I think this is a good one. There's a top tip that, I tell the people I mentor, so I'm giving away free advice here, is you can be a bit more strategic about it, in a sense of if you subscribe to like the construction magazines, they look at the planning applications in your area or your city or where you want to work, and you see what's just been received planning permission, then you can search which practice designed that particular building. They're going from obviously from planning, and then the client, or 9 times out of 10 want to build it, and then it's as you may know, then it's into that detailed design phase, and the likelihood is, if it's a particular sizable project, they'll be recruiting, because you keep a certain staff level. So I always tell the people I mentor to really study the planning applications, look at the construction newsletters that are free and announcing that there's these successful planning applications, and then straight away you should target that practice and send your CV in. And that is a very successful approach from not just the architectural assistants but also architects. I don't know if you'd thought of that one before.
Very good point. I think it's great, and it adds another perspective that I wouldn't have thought about. And I think that's what this is all about. There's a lot going on in the process, but at the same time, we can overcomplicate these things, right? I think sheer tenacity really helps, and actually just thinking about what the goal is. It's about getting in front of people to get hired. So completely agree with you, Jason. What I was going to pick your thoughts on as well. So the next stage, because I think sometimes we can forget, because your head initially at the start is designing the CV and portfolio. Now, I think you could actually getting your CV out there and emailing people is probably the first point where it starts to get real, right? Starting to get like really real. And what I mean by that is that people are going to see it. It goes from being an assignment to actually being physical, because soon you're sending that out there. Okay, it's digital now, but the idea is that you're going to get an interview, and probably the first interview in person that you get invited to. If you're anything like me, I was incredibly nervous, because the idea of being invited for an interview is, at first, I was scared. It's like, it's just this awful idea of you're going to be in a room and people are going to judge you. And I wish that someone told me at the time that actually interviews are no different than anything else. I mean, architecture students, we do crits, we do presentations, right? That's essentially part of an interview, but also there's an element of the human interaction, which is really important. So for anyone out there, and we can talk about interviews in more detail in another time, but just think about an interview. Actually, you got to plan for it. You got to strategize towards having this interview. You got to strategize about what you're going to wear. You got to make sure you're on time and all that stuff. But actually going to the interview, being human, going through your CV and portfolio is going to be the key thing. And I think the one bit that I would just summarize with everyone here is that actually that people buy with, make decisions or buy with emotion backed by logic. And what I mean by that is you're going to go and you got to have your Revit and you got to go through your design work, and they need to think that you have some level of aptitude. But the reality is the person will make a decision based upon how that conversation's gone, whether you're engaging, whether they think that you're charismatic or bright or astute or part of the company culture. And all those things are emotional because you can't really measure them. I can measure how many years someone's done Revit, but there's like this intangible thing about what someone could be the company material, right? There's a tangible feeling in the air when you go for an interview with someone, and as the hiring manager, you meet someone and you're like, wow, that person's going places. We should really make them an offer to join our team. And that's emotion. And then people back it up with logic. They will go, oh, that lady, she was amazing. That bright candidate was awesome. He was great. She was great, whatever. It's going to be like, I felt that that was an exhilarating interview, and that candidate had Revit. But people make that decision. Jason, have you seen that also in meetings as well? People making emotional decisions backed by logic.
Yeah, absolutely. You've seen the CV and you've obviously called that person in for a reason. So, for me, when you go to an interview, it's essentially about losing that job, not getting that job. So you can go in there and, they're already interested, and that's the way you should approach it in your mind. Your mindset should be, well, this is my job to lose. I go in there thinking I've already got the job, and that if you have a bit of a different mindset. But I know we're going to get into that in another Clubhouse. But if you kind of think about that emotion, my other top tip is, if you're going into an office and it's an in-person meeting, be nice to the receptionist, be nice to everyone that you meet on the way into that office, because you never know. I mean, I ask for feedback on other people, who that person I'm interviewing has interacted with, and like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think of it? What do you think of that person? If you're like rude to the first person you meet, or you're not very engaging with them, that might have a bearing on, you going to the next stage.
I think you're right. I think it's definitely it's a hard thing to overcome. It takes practice, and it's very easy for me to say all this now, Jason. But you're right. It comes with time. But I wish that someone told me, especially when I was interviewing at the start, like, it's not the end of the world. And as you said, the chances are, if someone's invited you to an interview, then they think there's something there, right? They're not inviting you into an interview to waste their time, because interviews take time. It's because they think that you've got the right material, that you could be the right person. So on that basis, I do agree with your analogy. It's there to lose, per se. But unless you do drop a few clangers, I don't think really you're in a position where you're likely to lose. The reality is, if you do your hard work in the CV and portfolio, and you mentally get over the fact that this is going to be stressful, it's an interview, and you prepare yourself, then the other best bit of advice I can give anyone in an interview is try as much as you can to be present in the conversation. Now, it's so hard, and I I'm guilty of doing this time to time, but I do try and practice being present. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, especially if I've been nervous in a situation or I'm going into a meeting where I'm nervous, I can kind of rehearse in my brain what I'm going to say, Jason. And I almost, like, when the person's talking, I'm not really listening to what they're saying. I'm getting ready.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to say the next thing. And we do that not because we're rude or not because A, we're nervous, but B, is because we want to make a good impression. But what happens there is you're in danger of not actually being present in the conversation. And another thing that I think really bodes well in interviews is it's that eye contact. It's kind of moving with the flow. And I think sometimes the downsides, whenever I see people doing presentations and if they're reading from scripts, I'm just feel like tearing up that script and saying, like, you got to get rid of that. You got to get rid of that. It's a bit like Microsoft XP. If anyone used it, we would just go to a blue screen and just crash. Right, Jason? It's like, oh my goodness, it just crashed. And sometimes I find that whenever someone's rehearsed an interview to death, then if the question comes up that they don't understand, basically the Microsoft blue screen of death comes up, and that can really derail an interview. Now, the trick to go around this is to rehearse your material, but don't follow it like verbatim script. Jason, I think, know your beats, but be prepared to answer questions. And if you don't know the answer, you can actually say you don't know the answer. I mean, Jason, what do you think about free-flowing, being present, and avoiding robot-like script talk?
Definitely, that is key. You have to engage, and that means eye contact. It means listening, being absolutely present. Thinking on your feet as well. And these are all things that what you've got to understand is the person who's hiring you is thinking of all sorts of things like, are they going to fit into the culture in the office? Are they going to get on with people? The last thing you want to do is have someone who's polarizing in a sense. But also from time to time through progression, you're going to meet the clients, and are they going to be good in front of clients as well? So they're thinking of all of these things, and if you kind of have that in mind when you kind of thinking about before you go for this interview, that these are the sort of things that they're going to be need to be aware of, and how you come across, then you put yourself in a better chance. I mean, if you're very robotic and you're just looking down, and I see this all the time at the universities, I fear for a lot of the students. I'll be really honest. Great designs, great great presentations, but my God, they can't sell themselves, and they can't sell that design. And I think it's a dirty word often in architecture, but you've got to be great at sales.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and actually, that can come with practice. And you're right, the word sales is like an awful word. It's in dinner parties, I say I do sales. People look at me like I kill someone. Like, ugh, sales, awful. You rob and steal. But no, actually, it's about conveying an idea and believing in your product and more importantly, identifying their consumers' needs. So, for example, okay, let's just bring that back quickly to what we're talking about today with the job hunt. Actually, you have to identify that in the architectural practice where you can offer value. It's being keen, being available to learn, implying maybe the software that you've learned and your aptitude for hard work, and helping out the team with difficult projects. Now, I'm not on about staying late all night and all that jazz and slave labor, not being paid. I'm saying just actually being part of the team and getting stuff done. And I think that those are the characteristics and the skills that are going to really get you attention in the interview. Is going to make the person think like, wow, we've got deadlines coming up. Maybe Jason would be fantastic on my team. We need someone with their ability. And I think that once you realize that's the opportunity that you're going for, you have to convey to them that that's what you can do. You can fill that need and you can make that business easier. And if you successfully do that, if you convince them, or you alleviate, this is maybe a better word for alleviate them of any doubts that you can't do that, they feel like you are the right person to do that, then I think that you are the right person, you are the right fit. And if they think that, then they're going to make you a job offer. Now, on that basis, we're talking about job offers. That's kind of, to me, like the last stage. So if we're going to summarize here, what we talked about at the start is designing your application, getting your applications out there, which is the one bit that people don't talk about that much, which is probably the most important thing, because people need to see your application and invite you in for the interview. Then you got to do the application, which is convincing someone that you are the right person for the company and the role. And should you do that? Should you convey that opinion that you can? You get the job offer. Now, if you've not been picky at the start, if you've sent your application to more places, then probability is going to go in your hand. Your lady luck will be on your side, and you might have more than one job offer. And wouldn't that be a fantastic thing? So then you're in the driving seat to think about what kind of company do you want to work for? What is the right fit? Now, sectors probably at the start of your career, Jason, you tell me about this. I don't think they matter a huge deal at the start, because you can kind of correct that over the course of your career. Obviously, there's one or two exceptions, like joining Jason's team on nuclear is going to be very sector driven, but you are the anomaly on that front, Jason, right? You know, if someone works on residential, you probably can move to commercial or hospitality later, whatever. But what I do think is important at the start, and you tell me if you agree with this, Jason, is about what kind of environment do you want to go into? I mean, in the interview, did the company give you a feeling that they were going to support you in your career? Did they feel like they've got time to invest in part ones and part twos? Do they think that they are able to keep you there longer than just a year or two? Is it a long-term thing? I mean, Jason, what kind of good signs would you say people should look out for in offers and going into interviews and soaking in cultures of companies?
I'm not going to talk about my situation, because I joined in the recession, and I was just so glad that I joined the nuclear sector before the whole of the world completely collapsed the last time, and I've stayed there. But I think we're in a situation. Yes, we've got a lot of high inflation at the minute, but the job market is still very, very it's very, very good, and there's a lot of shortage of people. And as you know, Stephen, there's lots of jobs, especially in London, and there's that is an absolute fantastic thing. Your question again was, just repeat that for me.
I can't even remember anymore. What was my question? Let's see. I was thinking more about offers, what to look for in, I guess, when you're making decisions, and we'll talk about this further and properly because in this topic, you can talk for an hour on it. But generally, I think that my one little nugget of advice is that if you've got one or two job offers, it should be about, do you really want to work at that company? Can you imagine yourself in the room there? Do you think that they're going to be supportive? And sometimes the flashy architecture company, which you thought would be the best fit, you might actually be surprised that one of the other ones you meant was an underdog, and that actually you really liked them. You like the person, you like the team leader. So is there any signs that you think are good, Jason, like good signs to look for when you've got an offer, things people should think about?
Yeah, this is obviously when you went to the interview and the interview was conducted. I always want to meet the people I'm going to be working with, because I've been to interviews before where a partner of a practice has interviewed me, and then I've turned up, accepted the job offer, because it was all great and the office seemed great. And then the person I was working with was just not the person who interviewed me. So I'd encourage people who are actually interviewing, or you as, or even before you accept, to say, look, can I come into the office and can I meet the people I'm going to be working with before I accept this offer? That is a tactic I've always used. So if I can't meet them on the day of the interview, or you're up against many other people, but then you do get that offer, go into the office, meet the people you're going to be working with. That is the best advice I can give. And I'll tell you a very quick story of why. So I'm not going to name the practice, but I went for an interview in a practice in the middle of the UK, because I don't want to give this away. And, went in, met the partner and met the two associates in this huge office, this big grand office. And I was thinking, wow, this is fantastic. And I accepted the offer and I moved from where I was, set up and went into the office on my first day. And I walked into this big office, and there was like no one there but two people, and the two people who were with this partner. And I went, where is everyone? It's like 9 o'clock and no one's here. He said, oh, this is it. We took this lease over on this office and we lost these huge projects, and we're just slowly starting to get back into where we were. So the two people who were side by side of the senior partner, who was from Manchester, he didn't work in that office. So I was in a small office with a huge office with two other people, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I'd committed to 6 months to move in there. So always go and look around the office and meet the people before you accept that offer.
Excellent. I think great advice. Now, I think we've kind of summarized the process. Okay. And we're going to keep talking about these over the next few weeks. Now, just before we kind of end, because it wouldn't be fair not to have the one hand that's been patiently waiting. So Aswin, I'm going to invite you to the stage, and feel free to say what you want or ask a quick question or anything. And then what we might do, Jason, is we'll wind down the room, but we'll let the people know where they can find you and stuff.
Cool.
Right. So Aswin, I'm going to invite you to the stage if you want to join us. If not, no problem.
Would anyone else like to come to the stage?
The cleaner in the corner. There's not many people. It's typical time. It's the end of year exhibitions, Jason. It's just
they're all working hard.
Everyone's working hard, I reckon. Well, I tell you what, Jason. While I will tell us where everyone can find you, and I would love to know.
Yeah, well, apart from LinkedIn, obviously you can find me there. But I also run a mentoring company, which is the Global Architect Alliance, which is also obviously on Clubhouse as well. I've been now in business for, I'm coming up to 6 months. I'm coming up to the half-year mark, and it's going really well. So I just encourage. I encourage, if you want to know more about mentoring, and I can talk about this particular topic in some detail, as Stephen can as well.
Yeah.
Please reach out to me. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. All sorts of, and even on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel, as I'm sure you have as well, Stephen.
Yeah, amazing. Well, you're right. We did set up on our YouTube conquest together. Well, look, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you being here. Everyone can find out more stuff on the architecturesocial.com. Now, I'm going to end the chat, and I'm going to end the recording in a second. So the moment of truth will be in a bit. whether Jason blocks me or not, depending on whether this recorded successfully, as I've not done a replay in the room. So thank you, everyone, for being here for this wonderful experiment. Jason, you stay with me a little bit. I'm going to end the recording now. And thank you, everyone. Next week, we will talk about CVs, architecture CVs, as a part one architectural assistant. Take care, everyone. All right. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye.